Thank you very much. Carl, I noticed that you didn't mention my very, very brief run for president. I lasted through 3 primaries, and actually, you know, Bobby Epstein was my only supporter in Kansas City. Bobby, thank you. But, you know, I just want to tell you how overwhelmed I am with this award. Because one of the things I'm going to say, and I won't be very long. By the way, I checked on your past honorees. I didn't want to be the one that was the longest speech. I did find out, by the way, it was President Clinton. No surprise. My old boss. But what I wanted to just do is read a couple of quotes. One quote that just came to my attention, what Harry Truman said. He said, "It's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit." And here was an extraordinary quote by an extraordinary man, and I'm deeply honored to get this award. One of my messages is going to be, because one of the things that I used to do when I was in diplomacy was try to resolve disputes, but we're the worst people in the world. I went to Saddam Hussein in Iraq, the North Koreans, Cuba, Sudan, the world's worst dictators. They used to ask President Clinton, "Why do you send Richardson to these places?" And he'd say, "Bad people like him." So, you know, I'd come back and with an American serviceman, a hostage, and you know, just thinking about this Truman Award. And my message on social media is, I'm on Facebook and Twitter, but I don't think that's the way you should all communicate. But I will tell you that since I got this award, since it was announced, Facebook and Twitter, I'm starting to like it because it exploded. I want to tell you how many people follow this award and how many nice responses I got from people in New Mexico. "Governor, I thought you were dead, but I see you just got a great award. Congratulations." So I want to say to the Truman board that is here, to Carl Zobrist, to Peggy Farrell, to the Beinecke's, a great philanthropic family that does so many, to Kevin Pistilli, who gave me a suite in this hotel bigger than this room. Thank you, Kevin. And to so many of you that are responsible for this award, thank you. I appreciate it very much. You know, Harry Truman, this quote that I mentioned about getting credit. I was ambassador to the United Nations for 2 years, the best job I ever had, best job. 200 countries, you know, the US, the biggest donor, big shot. You're kind of the social lion of New York. And I remember President Clinton calling me and saying, "Bill, I want you to come to be Secretary of Energy." And I said, "Mr. President, I love this job. Why do you want to do this? My wife, she loves it here. We're at the Waldorf." No, I need you." I said, "Well, Mr. President, I don't know that much about energy." He says, "That doesn't matter." I said, "So why are you picking me?" He says, "Well, I need a Hispanic in the cabinet." So I went to energy. I mean, please don't repeat that, but I ended up there. And the United Nations. I mean, just think, Roosevelt gets the credit. Yeah, but it was Harry Truman that made it happen, the UN. Today, the UN is maligned. You know, it doesn't bring peace, but it does. It brings people together to discuss peacekeeping. If you look at the successful efforts in Africa, in Bosnia, in Iraq, it emanates from UN authority. You know, in Harry Truman, in the Korean War, when there was an attack by the North Koreans, he went to the UN and got authority for America to act. But it was his concept of nations coming together to deal with peace and emergencies. The Marshall Plan. You know, you go to Europe today, and all over Europe, France, Britain, people still remember the Marshall Plan. You rebuilt us. We're not terribly happy with you now, America, but in those days, you made it happen. And that was Harry Truman, who didn't name it after himself, as he should have. He named it after General Marshall, which equally deserving. But that was the issue of the credit. Israel. You know, a lot of people ask me today, how do I feel about President Obama's initiative with Iran? And I've been a supporter of the president's foreign policy, domestic, and I know we have that very courageous judge that made that decision, and we thank you, Judge. I want to just say that when that decision of Israel was made, Harry Truman, I think the rabbi last night told me it took him 10 minutes to recognize Israel. He didn't hesitate. He didn't call a national security meeting, a debate of his advisors. He said, we're going to stand behind Israel. We're going to recognize it. And as I look at this Iran initiative with the president and curbing Iran's nuclear weapons, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. But I'm troubled a bit by the effort that has created a gap in our relationship with Israel, with Saudi Arabia. Iran's a sponsor of terrorism. I want them to curtail that. I want them to behave more like an international community. And there's still an effort between now and June 30th, when this negotiation is over, that possibly Iran comes into the community of nations and helps with a turbulent situation in the Middle East. Releases that American Marine that is there, Amir Hekmati. Finds way to release several Americans that are in Iran unjustly. So, again, Harry Truman, Israel, the historic relationship. And I learned about Mr. Jacobson and the haberdashery and the Jewish community here in Kansas City. And I am very fortunate. The family of Andrew Hoffman, the Katz family, Sharon Hoffman and Andrew, who's now in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Brooke, his spouse, who's back there telling me to wrap up my speech because we got to fly off to Spain. But I'm going to finish, Brooke. That I really feel there's a legacy here of community, of building. I see Mr. Kemper here. Kansas City, Kansas, Kansas City, Missouri, the Midwest values, Harry Truman, being loyal to his friend. Last night at the dinner, one of the relatives of Mr. Jacobson, who was the partner of Harry Truman, told me that he was asked what was the most important attribute in any politician. And Harry Truman said loyalty. And the man said, well, you mean loyalty to your country? Truman said, no, loyalty to your friends. If you have loyalty to your friends, that's more important than loyalty to your country, because loyalty to your country will follow. I mean, that was the essence of this man. Integrating the military. Today, if you look at all the turbulence we have in our country and the police forces and in the Baltimores or Fergusons or Albuquerque, New Mexico, if you look at our military, it is the most integrated part of our society. There are more minorities in leadership position, women, Hispanics, African Americans, Asians. And it was Truman that did that. He did it. And this is why our military as an institution is held in such high regard, besides their performance, besides their ability to defend us. And I wonder what Harry Truman would say when, you know, he sees some of these young men and women coming back with PTSD and coming back with wounds that are mental and physical, and he wouldn't stand for it. I know that because of his reverence for the military and in our institutions. And I hope that whoever follows and gets an award like this is recognized for that noble effort on behalf of our military. You know, I can go on and on about Harry Truman. I can also tell you that this most courageous decision that he made that you referred to, sir, about Hiroshima, there's a New Mexico connection. Los Alamos, an area that I represented as a congressman in New Mexico, as governor of New Mexico. Los Alamos, which, by the way, it's about 15,000 PhDs there out of 25,000 inhabitants. 15,000 out of 25,000. It was considered the smartest county in the United States. And when I ran for office, I always lost Los Alamos. So I wondered if there was a correlation there. But that connection, obviously, I had to mention. He was a statesman that played by the rules. Do the right thing. It wasn't popular. Harry Truman wouldn't put his finger up and say, well, I want to do a poll on that. He said, no, we're going to do this. We're going to recognize Israel. We're going to act decisively. But he always put diplomacy and dialogue as a cornerstone of American strength. Peace through strength. Diplomacy before military action. And when he acted, it was decisive. But at the same time, he was an internationalist. And I met a lot of these young students. We took photographs together from the emerging countries, India, Turkey, Nigeria, Africa, Latin America, Europe, our allies. And I saw in them a curiosity, a strength. I'd say to them, well, what's your name? And they'd give me their name. Nigeria. Well, how was the election there? You know, and they were able, they were strong, they were smart, they were honest. They said, no, there were one that said, no, this leader, he wasn't much good. But that was honesty. That was sort of a little bit of Harry Truman. Now, I'll conclude with this. You know, I mentioned that in my career, I'm a big believer in dialogue and negotiation. I think as Carl mentioned, I try to resolve a problem or get an American release. I talk to anybody. I talk to the Taliban. I went head-to-head with Saddam Hussein. I talked to the North Koreans until Dennis Rodman replaced me as the special envoy. He was real, by the way, Rodman was really, I remember his best years, 2 or 3 years, when he was with the Chicago Bulls. He was a really good player. Not a good special envoy, but I try to think of how young people and how the world communicates today. You know, the Arab Spring, some say it wouldn't have happened without Facebook or Twitter. That's how they assembled people together in the square in Egypt, and how in Tunisia, that's how information was exchanged. And I'm for that. I know this is a technological revolution. I try to go to North Korea with Eric Schmidt of Google to try to bring the internet there. The North Koreans wouldn't allow it because they knew if they did, that would be their downfall. But my message here is that face-to-face contact, negotiation, diplomacy is the best possible way to get something resolved. I wrote a book recently. It's called How to Sweet Talk a Shark. It's out there, 1995. No, I'm kidding. It's in the back there. And the editor said, well, you know, don't just talk about how you negotiate with Saddam Hussein or the North Koreans. Talk about how, you know, a spouse talks to their husband or partner or whatever, or how you get through in personal relations. How a banker decides on a loan. How if you're applying for a job, you know, you can connect with the person that you're trying to impress. Just human relations. And I think that's very important. And I think those qualities are, one, you respect the other side. You respect the other country's culture. I remember with Fidel Castro, talking to him in Spanish, connecting through baseball. I got 3 American prisoners out. I also used a little, you know, I said, you know, I noticed Jesse Jackson was here, and you gave him 10 prisoners. And your Hispanic brother, you're only going to give me 3? I didn't know whether he was going to slap me or put me in jail myself. But you know what Castro did? He laughed. He laughed at, I guess, my boldness. And then I talked to him about baseball. You know, the Cubans are great in baseball. And we talked in Spanish. I said, well, Mr. President, I just went to a baseball game in the Industrial League. The score was 11-10. The pitching wasn't very good. Great hitting, but not good pitching here in Cuba. He got ticked off at me. He said, you're misinformed. I backed off. But that personal relationship, those dialogues, I think are what are the substance of life. And I worry in these technological days that through Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn, I get these, whatever it is, LinkedIn, they want to, I don't want to LinkedIn. That's the way we're moving in terms of these communications. The young kids are laughing at me back there at my Neanderthal views. But I simply want to say to you that Harry Truman, you know, in those days, I don't know if he would have had an iPhone or a Twitter or a Facebook. He probably wouldn't have. He probably would have, like he stood up there and face to face, you know, when that film critic went after his daughter and he got ticked off and publicly, in a press conference, went after that New York Times reporter. And then would get mad. I recently donated my congressional, my ambassador papers to the University of Texas in Austin. And I was there about a month ago. And I'll conclude with this very brief story, which is an essence of Truman. It's a letter that Truman wrote to John F. Kennedy, 2 letters. And it was a collection that Lyndon Johnson had put forth. The first letter I read, it was typed up, Independence, Missouri, very fancy, 1 page, very direct. It said something like this to John F. Kennedy. Dear Mr. Kennedy, Senator Kennedy, because he was running in the primaries in 1960 election. I noticed that you are running a good campaign. However, I want you to know that I'm supporting Lyndon Johnson, because I think he is, in so many words, he said, more experienced than you are. And secondly, you know, you ought to kind of wait your turn. He didn't say that, but that was the implication. He said it very politely. But I wish you the best because you're a very fine, articulate young man. That was one letter. Then there was another letter that he sent to Kennedy. And it's at the Briscoe Center at the University of Texas, which said, this was after Kennedy won the nomination. Dear Senator Kennedy, you won the nomination, you ran an excellent race, I am with you, and I will work very hard to elect you. And then he said something nasty about Republicans, which I'm not going to repeat. Not nasty, but you know, he said, because I think we, the Democrats, are the party of the people, something like that. And that kind of, I think, shows the Harry Truman, candid, honest, direct, but then did the right thing. So if you did the right thing by giving me this award, I really thank you. I'm honored. I really am. To be in the same breath that some of those others that you gave this award to be here in Kansas City, the bedrock of the country, the connections you have with New Mexico through the Santa Fe Trail, through trains, through agriculture, so many other things, is something that I deeply appreciate. The way you've treated me tonight, last night and today, and to be in the same days with so many distinguished people. I am honored. I really am. And I only hope that someday, when I return to the independence life, I was there when I was running for president. I was there. I had a rally and 2 attended. Bobby was there. But I was given a tour of the library. And I was so impressed because it was modest. It wasn't that long. It was substantive. I could read letters. It was strong. It had those values of a great member of your community, President Harry S. Truman. Thank you all very much.